Welcome to a fine gaming experience, everyone. It's Bricks, or This Way Lies Madness.
And I'm just a wiggler hanging out on the wall. Look at them dipping their heads back and forth. Whoop, whoop, whoop.
Just dancing away. Speaking of dancing away,
Multiple cactuars.
yes, I've upgraded our room. Originally, we could only have like one pet, and since I caught a few more, I got many more beasties out and about. I've even set up the room so it's a little bit more Coral Highlands,
I like it.
except for the cactuars, but I have a surprise with them at the very end of the episode you'll like.
Hello.
We did something, so guess what? It's quest time.
Many quests to catch up on now.
This is a very important quest, actually. Doesn't look like it's important, but it is.
More fertilizer is actually surprisingly useful for that tree.
Yeah, for a lot of you who are starting out in the game and are finding resources are getting either too expensive or too hard to make, the tree is the best thing you can invest in. The more you use the tree, the better you're going to be. Oh,
I had the
Wow.
ingredients right there for it, so might as well just kick it in.
yeah, that is great when you actually go to turn in a quest like that. You already have everything you need.
Doesn't happen too often, but when it does. White monster for a white coat. Like you said, everything here is made out of other monsters, and Plomu's so light and fluffy, he's probably nearly hunted to extinction just for his fur coats.
Now, are we going to see more of the armor in this episode?
Now, I moved all the armor to the very end of the episode, so if you're wondering why I'm not showing off the Plomu right now, we'll be showing off the armor for the monsters now in the same episode. Make it a little bit more compact for everyone. And one of the nice things from exploring another area is our smith has now upgraded his weapon tree. Look how big that is.
Pretty wild. Now, once again, for those of you who don't know much about the weapons, you're going to notice that there's deviations that move down a certain way. Once you move past a certain point on a weapon, you cannot go back. And they will tell you that. But if you move your weapon to, let's say, the Thunder Element tree, you can't take it back to the original just bone tree. You have to keep with what you had originally and just kind of upgrade on that path. So you will end up having a lot of weapons, and I actually suggest that. If you find like 2 or 3 weapons you like, there's nothing wrong with having like 12 different weapons in your inventory.
If nothing else, it's fantastic to have lots of different elements and such. My hammer inventory on my main character is extensive.
And on my very first character that I played in this game on the PC, I have 15 different sword and shield options, all of which I use depending on what I'm fighting. It's a very versatile weapon, but if you don't pick the right element or damage type for the enemy you're fighting, it does lag behind a little bit.
Get our gains this time, I actually remembered.
Unlike Greatsword, where there is literally one that I use. Yeah, there's just one that I basically use in every single instance because it's just so ridiculously powerful.
Yeah, we'll be seeing the great sword soon, I believe.
Have fun with that. Have you actually done any practice with the Greatsword?
Now is the time.
Not in a long time. Admittedly, this LP has encouraged me to practice a lot with weapons I only lightly touched. Stuff like the lance, I was actually pretty impressed with how good it was once I really dove into it. That's a thing with a lot of players, is that we all get into our little groove, and it's nice to expand out, and this LP gives me that excuse.
I absolutely think that every player who starts off the game should not just pick the weapon that they want, but you start off with one of every single thing, try out all the weapons, try out every single one. Unfortunately, there's some of the weapons that are just really not good at the start, especially the bowguns, because you're limited ammunition,
Over
but you
there.
can still get a good feel for them.
What do you think?
Yeah, the bowguns I'm saving till the end for the weapons I try out, just because they have some unique properties
well.
compared to other ones. Someone was commenting that the Third Fleet Master there looks a little stoned at all times, and here she is just banging her bong.
Well, she is sitting there smoking a Kiseru with something in it. That's that long pipe she's got. So you don't know what she's smoking in that pipe, but whatever she is smoking in there, it's probably some combination of herbs and monster bones.
That was just like a little sensor she's holding there.
Heads up.
Such a cool place, and so extremely irritating for anybody new to the game.
Would you like to explain to everyone what that green fog is and just what it does?
So that is called miasma. And as you actually expose yourself to the miasma in here, it kind of poisons you, but it also has a secondary effect if it gets to a certain point where it will permanently half your health. The only way to get rid of that effect is by using a specific item to fix it. And I don't even know if we have those items made right now.
I don't have any on me, but we do.
Okay. The best thing to do when you have the status on you is just to get out of the areas where it is, but unfortunately some enemies are just, they live in it. Like we just saw.
It's interesting, too, because the miasma will alter creatures. We'll see some we've seen before, but they're almost zombie-like here. And I haven't shown off the tent menu yet, but we can change all our items and stuff in here. We automatically get healed up, restored to full stamina, and your weapons are automatically sharpened just for going in. Sometimes if you're really beat up and you just need a quick health boost, it's kind of handy to duck in if you're low on items. If nothing else, restock.
As you can see, a lot of things die in the Rotten Vale.
It's not my favorite area, but damn does it look so cool.
Oh yeah.
Effluvium.
Now, if you look around the area, you're actually going to notice a lot of the design is based off decay. A lot of this is monsters that have sort of decayed and rotted into the area, hence the name the Rotten Vale.
And some of them have taken advantage of all these bones and other items sitting around.
One thing I do want to mention about Brix's weapon choice here, I do not recommend the Poison Hammer for anybody who is somewhat new at using the hammer. He's specifically using that because he knows a lot of multi-hit attacks for the hammer, and he's also very good at laying in consistent combos. But it is a very specific and specified hammer style that, as I said, I would recommend just high damage to start. Get used to your combos, get used to your charge attacks, and kind of hit and run. But I know how you play with hammer, and you've been an amazing partner, so I'll just let your actions speak.
Hey, partner.
You can knock down area stuff here to do tons of damage, but I had installed Iceborne and they changed the targeting system on me. I didn't quite realize that happened, and now automatically will lock on. And I kind of missed my window horribly, but I make up for it with hammer skills.
Now, as you can see, Radamon just went onto his back there, and while he's on his back, you can mine him. Any of the monsters that have kind of the scaly backs are similar in style to Radamon and do that sort of side flop, you can actually go behind them and mine. I highly recommend it if you need parts. You can actually get some really useful things from them that way. You want to talk about the slide attack, seeing as it's kind of your forte?
Oh yes. So the hammer is very basic. It only has a handful of moves, really, that are very, very good. And that rolling one is pretty much the best. If you see my hammer glowing with a red aura, that is a basic power-up move they added to this game. I will no longer be able to be flinched by small attacks. It charges up my hammer power moves, it gives me more moves, and it has 3 levels of charge.
Oh, that was slick! You went right through the tail! That's giving information on firing the Clutch Claw there. That's actually something from Iceborne. As he said, the Iceborne's been installed, and it's kind of pervasive. It jumps in the game, and it just decides, hey, guess what? These are all new mechanics that you have no choice but to see and use. which is great because having those new mechanics in the main game is actually pretty fun.
It is, but I'm going to do my best not to show off a lot of the Iceborne stuff until later. So if you don't see me clutch clawing and stuff like that right now, it'll happen later. Now, Rabadon's an interesting monster because he's just rolled around in tar and then a bunch of bones. Those aren't his bones. He's just armored himself with them.
And you also notice that he got the mount off that. That's because that rolling attack does mount damage, and a ridiculous amount of mount damage at that.
Very much so. One of the reasons I love that, yep, here it comes, boom. The rolling hammer hit will do multiple big hits. And as you can see, hammer is one of those weapons you want to bash the head a lot with. There'll be later on here where you'll see stars just spinning around the enemy's head. And if you use the hammer right, you can have the opponent spending most of their fight on their back, dizzy, or just recovering from half of your hits. It's almost making you the monster more than the enemy for once.
I think that a lot of that does have to do with your skill level. You can see the difference in the way he's playing with this weapon compared to other weapons in the past. There is this... Oh, well, you did get snotted on with his sleep breath there.
I was a little too close to get out of the way, but then he roared and got me out of it,
Knocked
so
out of it.
all
Yeah.
good.
But you can see the difference in someone who's used to a weapon and someone who's not. And this is really the big difference. I actually, if you're ever having a really bad day, and you just want to play Monster Hunter, I actually recommend starting a brand new game and picking up a weapon you're familiar with and just chumping out all of the enemies that you fought before. Because once you know a weapon, it really doesn't go away. Kind of like riding a bicycle. You will remember the steps, you will remember how to get uphill and downhill. You might slip up a bit, but it really doesn't leave. And that even goes for vets of the series. I will say there's a lot added to Monster Hunter World, but all the things that have been added to it are, for the most part, quality of life changes. I don't think they've done a lot of nerfing of anything.
No, it's only been improvements overall from what I understand. This area is a little annoying just because it's a little bit like that mushroom we were fighting on in the previous episode.
Do you want to explain the charge mechanics with the hammer?
The hammer has 3 levels of charge, and the first one will just be a light swing that lets you start up some basic combos. Your second charge level will let you do a huge uppercut move that is fantastic for stunning the enemy. And level 3 has 2 different moves, basically. If you're standing stationary, you'll just wind up and do a huge power hit. Great for waking up monsters. If you go forward a little bit while you let go of it, you'll do a swinging blow around and around and around and around. You'll see me use that here in a little bit.
Your style of play is actually referred to as aerial hammer, because you're not just doing the spin attack when you have slide areas, you're also doing a lot of the leap attacks. It's a very safe way of playing, but you have to know the hammer's trajectory, how big the jumps are, how big the slide is, when to release the attack button. So I recommend you just kind of work on those, especially the level 2 charge uppercut. Work that right there.
Yep.
Work on those kind of techniques first because they're much safer, and you're not going to get yourself in a bad situation.
And right there is my circle combo. It is one of my best moves for damage. I basically do 5 hits in a row, straight down, that do increasing damage on each one. But if I miss, I will be left wide open. And that's the problem with the hammer, is that it is incredibly powerful, but has a lot of moves that will leave you very, very vulnerable.
So there's a lot of sort of design built into the heavy weapons in this game that make them very different, and a lot of people compare the hammer to the greatsword, but they're extremely different weapons. The greatsword, you move slow while you use it. The hammer doesn't actually slow you down at all, and it's easy to put it back on your back and pull it out. So even though it has slow attacks and can leave you very open after them, it has a lot of mobility, so it's very good for people who are like, man, I want a heavy weapon, or I want to KO monsters, and I want to move over to something from like the dual blades or the sword and shield. It's a good transition from there because it still has a lot of that same movement, whereas, unfortunately, the greatsword is extremely slow. It is one of my favorite weapons in the game, probably my number 2 next to the beloved Oh my goodness, I just forgot my favorite weapon. Lance, of course.
Now, we beat Rebden up pretty quick here, but he's got some neat moves. He does a lot of ones where he'll smash his head down and almost throw some of his bones on him off into you. When he's spinning around, you might have seen me hit him with my Pyrrhus pods. If you hit him with a projectile while he's doing his spinning moves, you'll usually, but not always, knock him out of them. And then he'll fall on his side, and you can mine him very easily.
These little bugs are super important. I highly recommend you get the etymology skill when you come here on a piece of gear, so you can get as many as you can, because the Hornitar has their wings, their carapace, a bunch of other pieces, are all used in a lot of armor sets you're going to get, especially a lot of armor sets specifically from the Rotten Vale. So, highly recommend it, especially if you're tank builds, because a lot of Radabon stuff is all about heavy defense.
I show off the armor set we get from those guys at the end of this, and it is very useful for the Vale, as we'll see. And that spinning attack you saw me do was the level 3 charge up there. Very good for clearing out hordes of small little guys.
Those sleep herbs. Those sleep herbs are something we haven't actually seen that much of, and they're extremely important, because they are the other half of the component that makes our knockout powder. The stuff that we use to actually catch monsters once they've been trapped.
Ugh, this place is filled with that vapor stuff. Don't
Now watch
move
my
in,
health
your
here.
health will drop.
I haven't taken much damage from fighting the big guy, but this will almost take me down to half health. There's a couple ways to deal with it, though. You can get out of the area with the green fog around you. You can wear armor with certain skills that will either lower or negate the damage from it. And that's a wonderful thing that I learned a little later than I wish, is torch pods. Don't aim for a monster, aim for the ground. The flame burst will burn off the effluvium in the nearby area. Still in a radius around you, and it will eventually come back, but it gives you a clear area to fight for at least a little while.
A few of the campsites actually have torch pods right outside of them, so it's a good idea to get a few of those loaded up in your slinger.
And as you could guess from that reaction, a lot of the creatures here that are full of that effluvium are weak to fire.
I'm taking a shortcut.
Nah, I took a wrong path, actually.
Oh, okay.
I was exploring, I might as well just catch some of the beasties here, but as you can see, too, off to the right I show off, there's just rivers of things down here. That is not water. We'll find out what that actually is in a little bit. Well, not this episode, but...
My absolute favorite monster in the entire game is actually part of the Rotten Vale as well. Oh, there's Big Guy. It's actually a very easy monster, especially when you take him out of this
How about we
area.
head back to the research base and take a break?
He does like fighting in the effluvium, though, but he also is a lot like fighting Great Jagras, where he'll have a lot of buddies helping him out. I'll come back to dealing with Great Gyros, though. He's an optional fight at the moment.
That was an absolute brutal fight you had against Radabon. I feel bad.
He only hit me once, twice.
I think it was twice.
I took more damage from the effluvium than I did him, so...
Huh? It's you two.
Would
Have we met?
you like fries with that?
Sorry, I forgot. You were out cold when I found you.
Remember, everybody, wear your mask.
Mm-hmm.
I'm from the First Fleet. You folks are lucky to be alive.
Hang on. She must be the one who saved us. Oh my gosh, thank you. Thank you.
You broke my arm!
Just glad you're still in one piece. Fifth Fleet, am I right? What are you doing out here?
Actually,
We're following lava poop. Don't sniff it. Don't. Oh, she sniffed the lava poop.
This is from Zora Magdaros? I'll see what I can find. I've spent years delving into this valley's secrets, and I'm starting to understand a thing or two.
Monster hunters probably smell pretty
Now it's
terrible.
your turn. Learn
Especially
all
in
that
this
you can
area.
about this place. Next time we meet, we can compare notes.
Now, she
Sound
brings up a
good?
little bit that we've mentioned here, how
Right.
this area is
See ya.
very much linked with the Coral Highlands. And for those of you who have played, don't spoil it, but maybe people can kind of figure out how the two are linked just from appearances.
Ooh, lots of goodies.
The benefits of capturing, guys. Always try to capture a beast if you can. It is so much more worthwhile. And if nothing else, you don't have to sit there and try carving a monster while other monsters are possibly beating your face in.
Mm-hmm. The only absolute negative of capturing a monster is that it gives you very little time after the fight to do anything else. But that's time you'd already have to spend carving the monster. Because I think you get only 20 seconds or 10 seconds after you do a capture
20
as
seconds.
opposed to a carve. Yeah. So if you see loot around,
should
got
prepare
your monster
before going
asleep,
down
go
to
get
the
that
bottom of the
first.
Rocky Vale. There might not be any
We just
turning
got something
back over there.
very neat I really like. It's not the most useful thing, but it's another one of those useful bits for helping you get items. We'll show it off as soon as we get to the ground level here.
I'm counting on you.
This guy adds something incredibly handy to the Coral Highlands.
Mm-hmm.
If you notice, the Coral Highlands is almost, I don't want to say islands, but it's a bunch of, like, spread out pillars, almost. And he will add rope lifts between different areas, so you can fast travel between parts.
Makes it a lot easier to navigate. Now this is an exciting feature. It's actually a lot more exciting if you play online, because if you go ahead and get somebody else's hunter card, when they join you in an online game, you can actually go in and check their hunter card in the middle menu, and by doing that, it'll actually add their card, and then you'll be able to see their Palico.
Now you might notice this got upgraded with Iceborne as well. The star levels got doubled. We get a lot more detail on our guys. And there's 3 categories, as you can see there. There's hunting, gathering, and research. And basically, different specialties for how good they are at getting certain things to bring back for you.
And you want to use this to replace the things you don't like doing. So if you don't like going out and collecting plants and stuff like that, you don't play around with the tree that much, you want to probably focus on a lot of the gathering things. Research is very important for a bunch of different reasons. I honestly just pick whatever the highest option is. And yes, you only see this cutscene once, but it's amazing.
I wish we saw this more often, because it is really cool. It would be a little annoying to skip it every time, mind you, but
I don't think so. I mean, they don't let us automatically skip through the chef cooking all the food, and we see that a million times. So
That's true.
I don't think they had to get rid of that.
Anyway.
one of the things I like using them for is collecting rare monster ingredients too. Some monster ingredients are used for some very rare items.
Some of the coolest armor in the game, just made out of bug parts.
I find that weird, because you're right. So many of the bug armor is just awesome.
And I believe in Iceborne they added in the ability to make a lot of different layered armor sets, right?
I believe so.
So you'd actually be able to use this very cool looking armor over top of something with much better stats.
Right there, a fluvial expert.
That's very useful.
Exactly. One of the reasons I hunted down a few of those guys. He also had Dung Expert there, which makes dung pods more effective at scaring off bigger guys. A lot of these skills are just handy. Handicraft just gives you like 5% extra sharpness, I believe, on your weapon.
Yeah, it's excellent on a lot of weapons that have a small amount of a high-powered sharpness. Later on, we'll have weapons that have like blue and white sharpness, and when you have a little bit of that, Handicraft's great because it boosts that amount. Gives you a longer time with way more attack power. Of course, the Palomu armor is, just like you mentioned, fluffy with lots of hearts.
The hearts is how it, stores all the air.
Is it?
Someone will actually put up a concept art picture in the thread of how Palomu actually fills his cheeks with air. It looked very interesting to see him squirrel puffed.
Now, this has a lot of anti-wind abilities. It's actually somewhat useful against Palomu himself.
I love this set.
Yeah, it's probably one of the weirdest helmets I've ever seen, but it's a great tank set. I have used many of the pieces myself when I've been using Lance. And I have to say, I actually like the armor on female models a little bit more than the male models. It just looks cool and still has that kind of feel. I really like that kind of glowing belt. It reminds me of like Kamen Rider or something like that.
She's got her flies in there.
Oh.
And she's got cat ears with horns, which is really weird, but this is a very, very good defensive set, though. Like, the bleeding resistance will help us against a monster soon. Guard is always great if you have a shield. Just a really neat set. And our little kitty friend gets some new ones as well.
Some of the coolest looking ones, I think.
Now, you're talking before about the kitty paw hammers.
Mm-hmm.
And this one gets one with, well, some texture to it.
And it's actually a pretty terrible weapon.
It really is. Like, normally it's good to have an elemental one on your Palico to help you out, and this is a non-elemental one, and not even a very strong one. It does okay damage, but that's it.
This one, on the other hand, is very useful.
So much so. Not only does it look cool, the hammer has sleep. And there's nothing more handy than having your Palico at a random moment just put a monster to sleep. You don't know when it'll happen, but it'll give you some recovery time.
Luckily, monsters actually show in their behavior when they're falling asleep. They'll sort of look sluggish, and they'll sort of wiggle towards the ground, and you can actually hit them during that phase. It's not until they've finally fallen into the sleep status that you can wake them up. And again, like we've said about sleep, it's that first hit is doubled in damage, so if you're playing online, let your greatsword and hammer users have a good old clunk at them.
We'll find a couple items I'll show off in a couple episodes, probably, that'll help with waking up monsters as well. Having the Tail Rider Safari from your house is super handy. And one last thing here, we've fed the monsters, and I think they added in, with Iceborne, the ability to play with them.
Oh no. What?
Just,
You're dead!
1,000
You're
needles
dead.
in our face.
That's ridiculous and shouldn't exist at all.
Well, hopefully
Wow.
my corpse will be able to do something next time. We're supposed to return to the Vale. We want to dive down deeper in there to explore its secrets, but we might have some problems en route. I hope you join me next time, and take care all.